Hello and welcome to Calls. I have got a very special episode or show for you tonight as it is Major Week. It is the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines, and tonight I plan on going through almost every single player in the field this week on a very detail-oriented basis, player-by-player breakdown. All stats will be provided by Fantasy National. Smash that like button for the special content this week. Subscribe to the channel. Support's always appreciated. We've got a lot to get into. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll start this evening and we'll just go top of the board price-wise in DK salary. And the highest person in DK DraftKings Daily Fantasy is Jon Rahm. And without any surprise, he is the clear-cut favorite in most people's eyes, in mine certainly. You see here, he is 7th in strokes gained total. I mean, all across the board, he's just playing some absolute fantastic golf. We last saw him at Jack's tournament, the Memorial at Muirfield, was up by 5 shots heading into the final round, and then on the 18th green on Saturday, as soon as coming off the green, he was informed that he had a positive COVID test. As I talked about last night in the data dive, you cannot convince me that he was not going to win that tournament. Anything happens, yes, but he was tearing that course apart when he had to withdraw. He's been in quarantine since that moment until either today or tomorrow. And as far as I know, he is still playing, although that is not a 100% guarantee. So make sure you check in tomorrow. Make sure that he is, in fact, playing if you're going to plan on using him. If we dig in a little bit more into Jon Rahm, and you will see just why he is the favorite this week at Torrey Pines. Torrey Pines is POA greens. And that is his best surface. I mean, he's going to play well no matter how difficult the course is, but he's certainly no slouch when it comes to difficult courses. He is consistent in wind, although this week it is projected to be calm. I'll probably take a look at that right at the end of the episode, but he's consistent across the board there. His last whatever metric you want to go to, 5 tournaments, last 10 tournaments, just solid all around. He was 8th at the PGA. Again, right above this line would be, essentially first, but withdrawal at Memorial, was lapping the field in strokes gained, I believe, approach. I can check that here in a minute. But let's see. 2, he missed the cut of the Wells Fargo, but after that, or before that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're looking at close to 20 straight made cuts dating back to the restart last year after COVID. And these are not, just barely making the cut type numbers. Out of the restart, he missed the cut at Charles Schwab, and then, a couple top 40s, working his way back into it. Workday, won the Memorial last year. WGC St. Jude was not terribly impressive. You have a 13th, a 6th. He wins the BMW. He's 4th at the Tour, 23rd at the U.S. Open. Then we get into the swing season, 17th at the CJ Cup, 2nd, 7th. So something to point out, Farmers, and the course is not going to play anything like it did in January this year. The USGA will come in and significantly increase the difficulty level. But if you want to see who traditionally plays well at Torrey Pines, just this year, Jon Rahm finished 7th at Torrey Pines in the Farmers, 13th, 5th, another comp course in Riviera in Los Angeles, 5th at the Genesis, a middling WGC Mexico at Congressional, ninth at the Players, fifth at the Masters. So I mean, he's just on an absolute tear right now. Certainly the favorite, at least in my eyes, to win this championship. Does that mean he's going to? Probably not. If you're going to take the field, or if you're going to give me, Jon Rahm or the field, I'll take the field. But there's a reason he is 10-1, the prohibitive favorite to win this week. But I did find a couple of things that were fairly interesting when you want to filter down and see if there's a reason to, say, fade Jon Rahm in DFS or fade him in outright betting. He surprisingly does not play the longest courses all that well in certain conditions. So here, when you filter for over 7,400 yards, he is still sixth, but his approaches fall off to about 88th. Strokes gain approach 88th on these long courses, over 7,400 yards. Again, he's still sixth in strokes gained total. He's not a slouch. But there is one aspect there that could be bothersome this week, especially considering how important it is to find the greens in regulation here at Torrey Pines. If you include this over 7,400 metric and you increase or add the filter of long rough, Jon Rahm continues to drop. Now he's at 17th. Strokes gained total. Still solid all across the board, but you can see that it's starting to come back to the field, so to say. Let's add Poa greens. He's still dropping down to 18th. So you add some of these parameters, and he starts to not look so overwhelmingly like the favorite. He's still the favorite to me. I'll have DraftKings Sportsbook on this other monitor that I look at. He's right now, I still see him at 10-1. Look, if you're very confident that Jon Rahm's going to win, and I wouldn't blame you, 10-1's a little short for me. I can't get there. I won't argue one bit if you're very confident that Jon Rahm's going to win. It's your money. If you think he's going to win, by all means, best. I'm not going to tell you no. I'm not going to tell you it's a bad bet by any means. I just prefer a little bit more value. If I'm going to try to hit an outright winner, I'm not going to go at 10-1 or less. Certainly this week, when even though he's the prohibitive favorite, there's not a lot of. This is not Tiger Woods in his prime, is what I'll say. There was Tiger Woods, and then there was the rest. This isn't that. You have Jon Rahm and Dustin Johnson and Bryson and Brooks and Rory and JT. All of these guys are pretty comparable. So if I'm going to get what I think is a comparable player at 4 to 6 to even 8 points more, I'm going to take that player. Certainly Jon Rahm is playing probably one of the best players in the field, but I'm not going to take him at 10-1. DFS, we'll get into the heavily DFS portion tomorrow evening, but he's your most expensive player. You need to get a top 5 out of him if you're inserting Jon Rahm into your lineups, because that does not leave you much in the way of wiggle room trying to fit in another higher priced player as a Justin Thomas at 97, Colin Morikawa at 95, along those lines. So you have to be very confident that he is going to top 5, and golf, anything can happen. That's Jon Rahm, prohibitive favorite. I'm not gonna tell you not to bet him by any means. I believe I'll check my custom stat model here, and that's what I have going on right now as far as what I am valuing. A lot off the tee, a lot of the approach. I've kind of moved around some of the numbers here, lessons around the green, I believe, added a little bit more percentage on the proximities. I believe Jon Rahm is still in the top 10 of mine, but he's not number one. I think Daniel Berger is still mine, and keep in mind this is for the last 36 rounds. Yeah, Jon Rahm's 8th. I mean, by no means, is he falling way down the rankings leaderboard. But he is 8th. In my particular models, he's 94th in scrambling. So, again, if he's hitting his greens in regulation, you won't have to worry about that. There is a little bit of scrambling going to be involved in this week. It's the USGA. They always set up courses extremely difficult, and if you're not proficient around the greens, it's going to come back to bite you time and time again. The USGA does not like to see scores, -5, 6, 7 winning tournaments. They love it when Tiger Woods and Rocco Mediate have to have a playoff at -1. That is what they want. But I don't want to go too much into my data model. We'll just stick to the strokes gained portion here. And if you go into the last 36 rounds, is a nice full look at how someone's been playing probably through most of the year, maybe since February or March. But if you want to narrow it down to recent form, he falls off a little bit. And like we mentioned, scrambling goes into the strokes gained around the green. He hasn't been great around the green. It certainly will be a factor this week. How much? I don't know. I don't think it'll be all that much, comparatively speaking to other tournaments. But one thing that I've picked up on from a couple of people in the industry that I watch, and I kind of started to connect or correlate this and connect the dots here, but was really hammered home when I was watching earlier today, is that if you look at the past few U.S. Opens, about 3 or 4, there's been a trend of long hitters, maybe not necessarily winning, although that is certainly the case, but the long hitters are permeating. They are just all through the top 10 of the leaderboard at these U.S. Opens. There's been kind of an emphasis on distance, fairways be damned. It's going to be difficult to hit the fairways anyway, so why not just hit it as fucking far as you can, get it as close to the hole as you can, and take your chances at hitting wedges instead of 6 and 7 irons from the rough. That seems to have been the strategy the past few years. Certainly plays out in the leaderboards from the past few years. And Jon Rahm is, he doesn't lack for distance. That's for sure. So, so there's my take on Jon Rahm. Absolutely, he's the favorite for a reason. I would not go after him at 10-1 outright betting. DFS, you better have a very solid plan in the middle to bottom tier of the price range, and hopefully I'll give you some good ideas here once we get further on down the board. Next is Jordan Spieth. He's probably having the best year of anybody on tour. Certainly arguable, but a resurgent Jordan Spieth. First in strokes gained total in the past 36 rounds. No stat is even middling. It's all above average to excellent. We'll go and filter on some of these. When you filter on over 7,400, he does falter a little bit. If there is a weakness in Jordan Spieth's game, it is off the tee. And if he's wayward a lot this week, he's going to be in a lot of trouble, just because of how difficult Torrey Pines is going to play. He's a short game magician. There's no doubt about that. People say he's got the magic beans for saving himself out of trouble. But if he continually has to rely on that this week, it's going to be, I don't want to say a short week, but I don't think he's going to be contending if he has to um, rely on his putter, rely on his recovery game a lot. Everyone's going to have to do it at some point this week. You just can't do it a lot. So there's the over 7,400. Let's add long rough. Jumps back up to ninth. Again, speaking to his ability to play around the green, his wizardry around the greens. And then finally, let's add Poa. And he drops to 57th. So when you look at Jordan Spieth, Poa is his worst putting surface by far. Well, not by far. Bermuda isn't all that great, but he is field average on Poa. He's always going to be good, no matter if it's easy or difficult. The wind, he's not bad in calm or windy, so negligible there. His previous 5 tournaments, he's been excellent. Previous 10, he's been excellent. Previous 20, it kind of shows there he can get himself into trouble off the tee. But I mean, the recent form is just spectacular. He missed the cut at Torrey Pines at the Farmers earlier this year, and since then, 4th in Phoenix, 3rd at Pebble Beach, which is another coastal course, West Coast wind. It's a good, not necessarily as good as Genesis, but it's still a good comp course. It's just not as long as Torrey Pines. 15th at Riviera, 4th at the Arnold Palmer. I mean, he made the cut at the Players. He just could not. He couldn't chip or he couldn't putt. That doesn't sound like Jordan Spieth. You would expect to see these numbers over here. This is an absolute outlier. You look at his previous events. I mean, there's a lot of green there, and then he just, for whatever reason, he said, the wedge is fucking this week. So, and then he wins the Valero Texas. I mean, just tee to green, 12.9 strokes. And it wasn't great off the tee. I mean, it was all in approach. Look, I mean, putts. He was putting the lights out. He was chipping. He was 3rd at the Masters. He was top 10 at the Byron Nelson. 2nd at the Charles Schwab. PGA, played well. Didn't really putt all that well. Jordan's in excellent form, and I do believe he is going to be a pretty solid DFS option, because it doesn't seem like a lot of people are on him this week, considering the savings that you get on the next few players that we'll talk about. And again, we'll get into that heavily into the DFS Tactics show. But Jordan Spieth right now at 14 to 1. No, excuse me, 18 to 1. That's pretty good value for Jordan Spieth. Again, I don't know if I can get there. I don't think this course suits him very well just because of his troubles off the tee. But there's certainly no reason why he couldn't win. I think his path to victory is he has to play much more towards his A game, because he is not the longest hitter. He doesn't suffer for distance, but he's not the longest hitter like Rahm, DJ Brooks, so on and so forth. So he has to be even that more precise with his irons and his around the green, which normally is very good, but you start adding the rough and the Poa greens, which he's not the best on. His path to winning requires much more to go right for him than it does, say, someone like Bryson or Rahm, because of their length. But 18 to 1, certainly not terrible odds. I think he's going to be a good DFS play. DJ is next, and his game is kind of hit and miss right now. Let's just call it what it is. Sorry, let me remove these filters here. Let's call it what it is. DJ has been inconsistent. He's only 27th in strokes gained in the past 36 rounds. His recent form, go back last week. I mean, 10th at the Palmetto sounds, very good. That was a very, very light field. I mean, it was almost an alternate field event. And when I say alternate field event, the weeks of the PGA or the Open Championship, the British Open, there are a lot of times an alternate event on the PGA tournament. Normally it's Corrales in the Dominican or the Puerto Rico Open. You have a lot of these what they call alternate field events. The Palmetto was basically that minus a couple of guys. You had Terrell Hatton in there, Harris English in there, Matthew Fitzpatrick. But some would say DJ should have won that or been much more in the mix to win than a 10th. Others say, you know what, he was, his form's there. He was striking the ball, off the tee, he was fine. The irons were there last week. He was putt. They just needed to see what they needed to see to make sure he was, in form. I am kind of in the former, where I am not sure where DJ's game is. I think this course, Torrey Pines, sets up pretty well for him, but you look, the approaches, which is the stat I value the most, they've been inconsistent. Last week he gains 2.5. Week before that he loses 2 or not the week before, the tournament before at Kiowa, loses 2, gains 2, loses 2.5, loses 4, then gains 3, gains 4, gains 5. The Genesis he gains 4 at Riviera. His putting's the same way, gains 2, gains 1, loses a half, gains 5, gains 4, loses 10 strokes on the greens. That's silly, stupid, bad numbers there. Again, I've used the term a couple times. It's playing whack-a-mole right now with DJ. Are you getting his, peak DJ? If you're getting peak DJ, 14-1 sounds like a steal, which I believe is what he's at right now. Yeah, 14-1 sounds like a steal. But if you're getting, this DJ that loses on approach, you're getting this DJ that loses on approach and around the green. I won't say, I won't make the bold claim that he'll miss the cut, but he won't be a factor come Sunday if you're getting this DJ. So I'm staying away from him. And certainly in the outright betting board, DFS probably more than likely. But if you start adding these filters, so he's 27th, strokes gained total, again, just a reminder, I'm looking at the past 36 rounds. You can certainly narrow it, to the past, if you look at the past 12, this will be the Palmetto, the miscut at the PGA. He's still right at 27th, so nothing changes rankings-wise. If you factor in these over 7,400 courses, I imagine he'll probably move up. That would be my guess. Come on, Fantasy National. There we go. Yeah, he moves up to 5th. And it's very solid all across the board. You go over 7,400 with long rough. Still 5th. And then you add POA greens. Stays at 6th. So you add some filters. Although putting in short game with the POA added is not good. So I believe I neglected to point out, I brought up some of his stuff, but let's just look at the kind of the overall stuff here real quick. POA is his best surface by far in putting. It's DJ's number 1 in the world. He's going to play well, whether it's easy or difficult. Plays, great, wind or not. So use whatever narrative you want on DJ. I am in the fade category this week. The course does set up for him, but I'm just it's a gut feeling thing, and by all means this will be clipped next week and say, oh, DJ won by 15. Look how stupid you are. Well, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for me to look stupid, but I'm here to try to help you all, give my data-driven insights and what I see, and have some good laughs along the way. Next is Bryson. Love him or hate him, he's a contender. First off the tee, mainly in distance. He is, when you talk about, U.S. Opens and needing to hit it as far as you can, no one better than Bryson. His best surface is POA. He gets better when the course gets tougher. No clearer here. And then this graph here. This actually makes a lot of sense too because he's such the mad scientist. He has everything down, calculated to a T. When the wind picks up, it throws all his calculations off. So he's not great in the wind. Fortunately for Bryson fans, it projects to be very calm this week. I've seen 10 miles an hour be the highest sustained and gusts. So looks like it's going to be calm to maybe moderate. But you look at his strokes gained, recently in great form, all the way 5, 10, 20. Look at some individual tournaments. He played well at the Memorial where he's won before. He was a bit of a factor on Saturday at the PGA, it was Friday. Kind of fell off the weekend. Made the cut of the Byron Nelson. Wasn't terribly impressive there. Top 10 at the Wells Fargo. Masters wasn't great. Third at the Players. Won the API this year. So you missed the cut of the Genesis and did not play the Farmers Insurance. So if you're looking for a reason to fade Bryson, at this comp course he didn't play all that well. But he got fifth at it last year. So, it was just, we can look. It was probably just a pretty bad week. How often is Bryson going to lose strokes off the tee? That answer is not many. In fact, that's the last time he lost strokes. And holy smokes, the last time he lost strokes before the Genesis this year was all the way back in 2019. He has gained strokes off the tee in every tournament since the Tour Championship of 2019 to now, minus the Genesis. So how often is he going to lose strokes? Not often. This is a pretty big outlier, I would say, for Bryson. Again, POA is his best surface on putting. He plays better when it gets difficult. Bryson's definitely someone to look at this week for DFS for sure, just because length matters in U.S. Opens. Length absolutely matters in U.S. Opens. That's why I put off the tee at such a high percentage, because normally I do approach. I put off the tee as high up there as I could. And he is one of the 3 second choices, I guess you would say. He's at 14-1 with DJ and Xander, who we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But I'm not going to go to 14-1, I don't think, on Bryson, although I think that's fair pricing for him. But DFS, I'm definitely taking a look at. Next is Brooks. Brooks at 10-1. It's 21st in the field in strokes gained total. Last week at the Palmetto, he missed the cut, but a lot of people were encouraged because they saw that the irons were there. They saw that the off the tee was there. He just couldn't putt or chip to save his life. And that's what people kind of wanted to see, because when you saw him at peak Brooks, there's the approach, there's the off the tee. And then he had a good chipping and a good putting week. So they saw what they needed to see out of Brooks, and I tend to agree. It would have been nice to see him get a few more or more numbers in, make the cut, see where his game truly was or is, but he'd use it as a tune-up for this week. Second at the PGA, missed cut at the Byron Nelson, missed at the Masters, so he hasn't played often. He missed the cut at the Farmers earlier this year at Torrey Pines, 38th at Riviera at the Genesis Invitational. So where Brooks' game at right now is kind of questionable. That's why people were trying to gravitate towards this. I do tend to agree that it was good. It was encouraging to see him gain strokes off the tee and approach, because this, I've said it time and time again, this stat is so fickle. It can go good to bad in a heartbeat. You can have a good week, you can have a bad week. What gives me pause on Brooks this week is that POA is not good for him. He actually loses strokes on average on POA. He doesn't play well in the wind, but fortunately for Brooks this week, it looks like, again, as of a Tuesday evening, it looks like it's going to be calm. And of course, this is Brooks. He plays better when it's difficult. Look at all the major championships he's won. But there's Brooks. I know I didn't do it quite as much with Bryson or DJ, but you look at it over 7,400. Brooks is rises to third. Bryson does fall a little bit just because of the around the green, because he's not taking quite as much of advantage of his length, which is surprising considering he's hitting it so far, but he's missing fairways, and that's getting him into trouble. So over 7,400, Brooks is one of the best in the world, third. Add the long rough, which is Torrey Pines traditionally has long rough for the Farmers Insurance Open. The USGA is absolutely going to jack that up. It's going to be some thick stuff. You add in long rough and over 7,400 yards, Brooks is still fourth. Bryson does come back to 13th, although his around the green is starting to suffer. Bryson's is. Brooks is pretty solid throughout. And then if you once you add POA to that as well, Bryson really falls off on the POA. Brooks stays fairly solid except for putting and short game. Just to give you an idea, for some comp courses, POA greens with long rough that are over 7,400 yards. Bethpage, which I went into on the initial research show, I believe was the 2019 PGA, I believe. Shinnecock Hills was the 2018 U.S. Open. And Torrey Pines. I keep mentioning Riviera because of the Kikuyu it has. Kikuyu is most prevalent on the West Coast. And that's what Riviera has, is Kikuyu fairways and rough. And Kikuyu is different than, say, Bermuda. It plays different because you can hit it's known as sticky. There are times where players will have such an atrocious lie in Kikuyu where they have to hit backwards to get into the fairway just to have a shot into the green. Kikuyu is not fun to play out of. Not that I've ever played out of it, but the professional pundits and players talk about how difficult it is to play on Kikuyu. But anyway, so there's the look at the guys above 10,000. Let me know in the comments who's your 10,000, 10K guy that you're going to use this week, or you're betting, or maybe your biggest fade. Who you are just absolutely out on, and if they win, well, it's one of those weeks where you lost your ass. Let me know in the comments. Just to wrap up the 10Ks real quick. Bryson's at 14-1. DJ's at 14-1. Brooks and Spieth are at 18-1, and of course Rahm's the favorite at 10-1. So that'll wrap up the extreme top end of the board. Anyone over 10K. So let's drop into the nines. First up, you have Rory. Been playing fairly well recently. 26th in strokes gained in the past 36 rounds, but POA is absolutely not his specialty. He is a Bermuda player through and through. That's pretty well known. It's Rory, so he always is going to play well no matter how difficult or easy it is. He plays well in the wind. He's from Northern Ireland, I believe. He's over there in England somewhere. Northern Ireland. He's not Scottish, I know that. I think it's Northern Ireland. So he'll play well in the wind or calm. It's Rory McIlroy. He's one of the best players in the world. But his around the green game has been troublesome lately, to put it nicely, for somebody that's top in the world. And Rory's strength has always been his length. He can just bomb it out there. The past few tournaments, he's been struggling. He's been struggling to do that. He has not been gaining strokes off the tee relative to the field. So that gives you some pause for sure. He played fairly well at Jack's tournament at Memorial or at Muirfield. Made the cut of the PGA. Didn't putt worth a lick. Did win the Wells Fargo. Just astronomical approach. His irons have actually been, really dialed in. So if we can get, peak Rory with these tee numbers and have the irons stay where they've been, now you're looking at a competitor. Now you're looking at Rory, who should be, 15 to 1 or less, and right now he's at 20 to 1. But didn't play the Masters well at all. Was terrible at Sawgrass. Missed the cut at the Genesis. Did come 16th this year at the Farmers at Torrey Pines. So overall, Rory's one of the best players in the world. I am probably a little higher on him than others, just because of the irons are there. If we can get his tee game back, we're looking at a potential major winner again in Rory. Next up, Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas has been kind of getting, I don't want to say forgotten about, but he's kind of the big six or big seven. He's kind of falling off the radar and being talked about. 29th, not terrible by any means in strokes gained, but he's had his struggles for sure. He's not an abject failure on POA. He bents his best, but he's not terrible on POA. It's Justin Thomas. He's one of the best players in the world, so he's going to play better or play well when it's difficult. He's fine in the wind or not. But this area here, this tells you everything you need to know about Justin Thomas. Is the putter cooperating? He's got just as much chance as anybody to win. If that putter isn't cooperating, if it's bulky, you got some issues. Just look at the Memorial here. Looks like he had a decent enough tournament. Then you realize he was 9.5 strokes above the field from tee to green. That means the green was absolute fuck all. It's almost like he putted with his 5-iron. He Si-Woo Kim'd almost everything. I bet. It's what it seems like. Minus 8.5 on the greens that week at Muirfield. That is... You guys don't need a whole lot of in-depth analysis on that. That's bad. So, and he has these weeks. 8.5 at Memorial. 6.5 at the Valspar, and still top 15. Minus 6 at the Genesis when he lost everything. It was just a bad week. So, is Justin Thomas's putter cooperating? You've got just as much chance as anybody to win. Right now he is sitting at 22 to 1. So I am personally out on Justin Thomas. I just don't like where his game is at, and I think putting, even though I talk it down quite a bit, I think it's going to play a factor this week, just because of how undulating the greens are at Torrey Pines. The USGA always makes them fast, no matter what course it is. Justin Thomas is great around the green, but can he putt? And that's always been his biggest issue. Him and Hideki, are they able to putt? They're going to be in contention. If not, it's not going to look so good. 9,500, Colin Morikawa. Probably no real surprise. He's second in strokes gained total, first in ball striking, first in approach. Putting, let's cover our eyes a little bit. He's never been known as a short game player, putting or around the green. But but he's the best iron player in the world. That's certainly up for argument, but metrics wise, he's pretty clearly the best iron player in the world. He's not a great putter anywhere, so I mean, I know it looks like clearly Poa is his worst, but this isn't as much as, say, when somebody's best surface is Poa and they're gaining. Colin Morikawa loses putting regardless. Now it sucks that Poa is his worst, but Colin Morikawa is just not a good putter. So, him losing, at least in my eyes, losing, 0.27 strokes on Poa greens versus, Bermuda or Bent is not as much of a factor because he's just bad everywhere. Colin Morikawa is better when it gets difficult. And that's what you do like to see in major championship week. He's fine in, with or without wind. And then, again, kind of like Justin Thomas, this chart here shows you everything you need to know about Colin Morikawa. Is not good on the greens at all. His short game, while it has improved a little bit, he's still not very good at it. Everything, when Colin Morikawa wins tournaments, it is all about this right here. Because this is consistent. He's very good. And if you catch a good putting week, that's when you're going to win, like at Harding Park. Last year at TPC, Harding Park, gained 8 strokes on the green. Let me tell you, there aren't a lot of weeks like that. I mean, in fact, there's a couple inverses. Minus 7.5, minus 7.3, minus 8.3. So if you find the good, we don't even have to talk about 8 strokes. If you find a 1, if you find a 3.20. Now, granted, when I highlighted the 1, he missed the cut at the U.S. Open last year. But as long as you're not losing 7.5 strokes on the green, you've got a contender at Colin Morikawa, and rightfully so. Like I said, best iron player in the world. I am off of Morikawa this week, so he is sitting at 25-1 right now. I'm not going to go there, but if you like me, if you believe in the irons, by all means, and if you catch lightning in a bottle, if you catch him on a good putting week, you're going to be in contention on Sunday. Next is Xander Schauffele, just solid around across the board. Still has not broken through with his big win yet. Most people think it's a win, not if. I tend to agree. He is one of the best players in the world. But the narrative is starting to build that he can't close on a big tournament. And at some point you just have to do it to shut people up. So we haven't reached that time yet. I mean, he's still young, mid-20s. But how long of a leash are you going to give him? I mean, you can't keep saying that when he's 32. So having said that, Poa is his best surface. Generally plays better when it's difficult. You like to see that. He's better when it's calm. Unfortunately for Xander this week, it seems like it's going to be calm. Xander's not a good chipper. He's okay on the greens, but if he has to rely on his short game, it's going to be problematic. So you got to hope that the approaches are dialed in this week for Xander, because if he's having to play out of that Kikuyu rough or in the sand, it's going to make a long tournament for Xander. I would be willing to bet he makes the cut, but won't be a factor. Played well at Jack's at the Memorial. He did miss the cut at the PGA because he was an abject failure with a wedge in his hand, or around the green, whatever club he was using. 14th at the Wells Fargo, 3rd at the Masters, but that was a lot of people think that he should have closed that deal out on Hideki, and then he started to put a little bit of pressure on Hideki and then promptly puts it in the water on 16. So missed the cut at the Players, But earlier this year, like he was second at this course, and he is a California kid. I believe he might even be a San Diego guy. I know he went to San Diego State, but he's a San Diego kid, or at least a California kid. Played well at Torrey earlier this year. Played well at Genesis. So, if you want to ride that narrative, sure. I'm not going to bet Xander Schauffele outright. I mean, he's the same odds as DJ and Bryson, and I would much rather bet Bryson and DJ than Xander at that price. He's 14-1. But I am. It's major week. I'm going to use Xander in some DFS. He's just a solid player. He's never come in any worse than sixth in his 4 U.S. Open appearances. He's got a sixth, a third, a fifth, and a second. You can't argue with those results. And he's 11th in strokes gained total in the past 36 rounds in the field. Just around the green is his worst. Next is Viktor Hovland, and Viktor Hovland is a rapidly rising star in this game. A long hitter. Certainly can use some improvement around the green, but for being a long hitter, he's very good with, I shouldn't say very good, but he's good with the putter. His approaches are good. At the Memorial, he loses 5 strokes putting and still, was at least a little bit of a factor, I think, early on the weekend. PGA tournament, he was, doesn't look exciting, 30th, but his biggest strength off the tee, he was actually losing strokes on the field. And you come down here, he had gained on strokes. Again, we don't know the Masters because that's proprietary, so we only get the total strokes gained total for Masters. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. We're looking at about 15 tournaments here where he had gained strokes off the tee. So I am more willing to bet that is the outlier, and then bump this up to on a normal Victor week. I'm looking at a top 10. His putting was good. He was actually chipping that week. His approaches were good, not great, but good. So I like Victor a lot this week. I can't. He was at 28-1 on Monday, and I should have pulled the trigger. I didn't, and now he's dropped all the way to 22-1. I could still talk myself into that. I'm more so just ruining the fact that he was 28 and I let it go Monday night. But Victor, I think, is probably one of the favorites here at Torrey Pines. I think the course sets up great for him. He's in great form. As long as his irons have been cooperating like they have been, I think this is going to be his big breakthrough win. Clip it, do whatever when he misses the cut and shoots 80, 78. But I think this is going to be a good week for Viktor Hovland. Patrick Cantlay at 9,100, 10th in strokes gained, playing well all across the board. Another California kid. He understands. I'd say kid, California guy, understands California golf. He is I won't say premier, but his best servers clearly is bent. Poa and Bermuda are bleh. He always plays well when it's difficult. Plays well in the wind, so that's not a big factor. Last few tournaments, again, he's just been solid. His putter has been bulky lately, but over the course of career and long term, he's been he hasn't been fantastic on the greens, but he's been above average. When you come back here, look at the Memorial. He gains 6 with approaches, gains 4.5 around the green, he gains 3 on the greens. That's a recipe for success, no matter where you're playing. And the fact that he gains almost 4 off the tee, that's how you win the Memorial. with an asterisk because John Rahm had withdrawn. That's how you come in second at the Memorial. He played well at the PGA, and a lot of people were kind of wondering where Cantlay's game was because he had missed 4 straight cuts. And Patrick Cantlay is not somebody who plays often. So, when it's 4 straight missed cuts, it was 2 months of missed cuts just because he doesn't play often. But earlier this year he was tied for 15th at Riviera. Again, lost a little bit on the green, but you'll take that. You would prefer it to be positive, obviously, but as long as he's not losing 2.5, even 3 strokes on the greens, if you're getting the normal baseline Patrick Cantlay, you got yourself a pretty good paycheck and definitely somebody to look at in DFS. I can't get there on the outright betting. He's 20-1. I would want a little bit higher, I think, on Patrick Cantlay. But that's what I'm seeing on Cantlay. And then the round out the 9,000s is Patrick Reed. Again, he's polarizing, kind of like Bryson DeChambeau. You love him or you hate him. But you can't argue with the results. He's third in strokes gained total the past 36 rounds. His worst thing is off the tee, which he's not a failure at. I mean, he actually gains off the tee still. It's just not as good as the upper echelon because he just doesn't have the distance that the upper echelon has. But taking a little bit of a look into Patrick Reed, obviously he plays better when the course gets difficult. He's fine, calm or windy. He's good on POA. It's not like we're on Bermuda where it might be an issue. He's good on POA. It's not great, but he's good on POA. And then, the form. This form is immaculate compared to, others we see. He might not have the extreme upper tier of a stat. Excuse me, like say a Bryson off the tee or a Morikawa with approach. Patrick Reed's known for a short game. And it's, pretty good, really darn good. But, if you're catching the Patrick Reed at the Memorial here at Torrey Pines, you're going to be in for, if you're using Patrick Reed, you're going to be in for a good week. He top 20s at the PGA and loses a significant amount off the tee. He does not need to be great on the tee to compete. But if he wants to win, he'll need to be, positive. But, certainly even, dead even average with the field is all it takes for Patrick Reed to win a tournament. To me, it's as a fellow competitor, not necessarily in golf, but having played sports, there is a non-zero factor of somebody who just has the I'm not quitting mentality, the I've done it before mentality, I can do it again mentality. There is something to that. Now, can you quantify it? Absolutely not. But I am a firm believer in, for example, just to give the complete opposite. As of so far in their career, when you have a Patrick Reed in the final group versus a Xander Schauffele in the final group, I'm going to 9 times out of 10 tell you Patrick Reed's going to win because he has that mentality. Not to say that Xander doesn't, but Xander hasn't done it yet. It's more of a prove it until, I'm always going to be not necessarily skeptical, but just show me you can do it, because once you've done it once, the floodgates will open. It'll start rattling off. He'll start winning. The big thing with Patrick Reed, he won at Torrey Pines earlier this year. Played extremely well. Wasn't even really great with the approach, but he won in typical Patrick Reed fashion, putt and chipping. So, it's Patrick Reed. It's a major. He's gonna contend. That's the easiest way I can put it. So that's the 9K range. I think in this range for me, just a quick overview. Like I'm not betting Schauffele at all at 14-1. I will certainly use him in DFS. I still might bet Hovland at 22. I just rue that I didn't pull the trigger on the 28. Certainly using Cantlay. Certainly will have some shares of Reed. Morikawa, kind of like I talked about with Spieth. It's not that Morikawa can't win. I'm not saying that at all. But on a course like Torrey, in a U.S. Open where length matters, Colin Morikawa's margin for error is much more slim than somebody like Brooks or Bryson, Jon Rahm, DJ, Victor Hovland. He has to be so extra precise with his irons, which he can be because he's number one in the world. But if he's wayward at all, he's going to be in a lot more trouble than other guys just because of the relative lack of distance off the tee. But that's the 9,000s. Then we start getting into the 8,000s. 8,900 Tony Finau. And, I mean, honestly, this little chart here explains everything you need to know about Tony Finau. Great everywhere except on the greens. He is one of the premier drivers of the golf ball. His short game is immaculate. He has widely been recognized as a bomb and gouge player for a while now. His irons have actually been really good lately too. But I was a little surprised, to be honest, that POA is actually positive for him. It looks like he is just an abject failure on Bermuda greens. POA's not great. Again, remember, he's not a good putter in the least anyway, so we're talking, a half a tenth gain here. So, it's negligible, but at least we're not on Bermuda is what I'll say. Tony Finau always plays better when it's, when it gets difficult. That's why he always contends at these majors, good in wind or not. Last 5 tournaments, just like we've talked about with a few people, Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa a little bit more so with the around the green. You'll see Matsuyama is a little bit like this as well. Get the putter out of his hand and you'll be okay. Unfortunately, you've got to have the putter on every hole. So, and I mentioned this, I believe, either in the initial research show or the data dive. I like Tony Finau this week. I really do. I think he's going to have another strong tournament. I don't think he's going to win because of this. On other weeks, I'd be willing to play the lottery and see if I can just catch a break even or even gain a couple of strokes putting. But it's weeks like these two, the past 2 outings he's had, where he's -6 and -4.5, and still contending. I mean, top 20 in the Charles Schwab and a top 40 or 32nd at the Memorial, having lost all those strokes on putting. If you're going to play that lottery, I mean, this is the kind of guy, the kind of player you want to do it on. Tony Finau. I mean, you can't argue with the approach. You can't argue with the around the green, off the tee, any of that. But more so this week than others, I am paying attention to the putting on these Torrey Pines undulating. Probably, they're not normally fast, but the USGA is going to, I bet, make them very fast. You're just going to have to be able to putt. And Tony Finau has historically shown he just can't do that. You want to put like a top 5 or a top 10? It's an excellent bet. I mean, it's too short of odds for my liking. He's 21 outright. He's 4-1 to top 5. Plus 188. I don't remember what that exactly is. It might be 6-5 for a top 10. That top 5 bet is 4-1 it's okay. I mean, you'd have to lay some serious wood, as they say, to make anything off that. But I do like that bet at 4-1. So, that's Tony Finau again. second at the Genesis, which is a comp course, second here at the Farmers earlier this year on the same course, the Torrey Pines. So, and he's played Torrey Pines historically well as well. Second this year, sixth in 2020. Hopefully y'all can see that because I'm looking at DraftKings. Sixth, 2020. 2019, he was 13th. So, I mean, Tony Finau is somebody who has played Torrey Pines historically very well. So, he's very familiar with the course. I'm just scared of the putting. I'm just scared of the putting. So, I'm not on him in any way, shape, or form in outright bets. I'm very, very certain, and I'll dig into it tomorrow in the DFS tactics. I'm very certain he's going to be chalk in DFS, and I'll eat that chalk because I think he's just going to be a very good week for him. Next is Hideki, Masters champion at 8,800. And kind of like with what we've talked about with Tony Finau, with Justin Thomas, if you get a week where the putter cooperates, you got a major champion, like at the Masters. He is only 31st in strokes gained total. He has not played well since the Masters. The good thing is we're not on Bermuda. So POA is actually the one surface he is positive putting. I don't take a lot into that because he's just atrocious on the greens normally, displayed here. I mean, look at the Memorial. He made the cut despite losing 9.5 strokes on the greens. 9.5. That is astronomically, holy shit, why do I ever putt type numbers. But 23rd at the PGA despite losing 3.5 strokes on the green. I mean, this is an elite talent that when you get a week, I mean, again, the Masters stats are proprietary, so we only get the total. But, if you get a week where he just breaks even, or even maybe gains you a stroke and a half on the greens, and, the normal form, stays kind of where it is, gain a stroke off the tee. His irons have, traditionally been very good. He's been good around the green. If you can get one of those weeks, you're looking at a, maybe not a champion, but a premier finish at an Open. You're looking at a 13th or a, top 15 or so at a U.S. Open. So Hideki is another person that I mean, his odds are at 40-1 right now. That's if you believe in the iron talent and think you want to take a chance at finding the week for the putter, sure. I'm not going to get there, although 40-1 is kind of ludicrous for the Masters champion. But I'm kind of out on him. I'd have to see what the ownership projections look like for Hideki to see if I want to play him in DFS. I just don't know yet. It would probably come down to how chalky he is. If he's not chalky, it'd probably be a pretty good pivot off of Tony Finau because they're basically the same price. And I'm certain almost everybody will play Tony Finau just because of the course history, his current form, all of that. 8,700, Webb Simpson. What's there to say? He's a very good player, just not a lot of distance on him. His strokes gained off the tee is all in about fairways, and while that could be valuable here, as I've discussed, length matters at U.S. Opens, and Webb's just not a long hitter. He's just not. Very good short game, good on POA, is good when it's easy or difficult, in the wind's fine, and he's certainly not a bad player. I like Webb Simpson this week. I'm just not going to bet him at 45-1. I think he's a decent DFS play. Didn't play either the Farmers or the Genesis this year, but his current form is pretty good. Gets top 10 at Harbortown at the Heritage despite his short game, which is normally his strength. Then he loses 2.5 at the PGA, but still comes 30th. He's just there's a reason he is, top 15, top 10 in the world. He's just a good player. I'm certainly out on him on the outright betting portion. DFS, maybe. I just realized this is getting close to an hour already, and we're not even halfway through. I won't go through all of the players because some players just don't have stats, or to be quite frank with you, they could knock on my door and I wouldn't be able to tell you who they are. So there's not a lot of analysis that I could do there. So I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. Next is Will Zalatoris. Young career, obviously came, really jumped on the spotlight with that second at the Masters. Followed it up with some good performances. He's shown early that he's not the greatest putter in the world, but he's elite with the irons, elite off the tee. Will Zalatoris is just, he's going to be a star in this game for quite a long while. Good. He's actually, this is the surface that he actually gained strokes on, but you can see he's just not a good putter overall. In fact, the last 4 tournaments, he has lost strokes by a significant margin. If you can find a week where he's somewhat breaking even putting and not a disaster with the wedges. Look, he was a disaster with the wedges, lost putting, and still came 8th at the PGA. That's just, this is a top tier talent for years to come in the world of golf. He 15th at the Genesis this year, 7th at the Farmers this year. Plays California golf pretty well. Will Zalatoris is 40-1 right now. I think that's a fair price. Not over the moon value, but it's a fair price, and certainly somebody I would consider in DFS for sure. Scotty Scheffler, this form, no stat lower than 56th, and then he's basically top 30 if you take the 56 out. He's just playing some great golf right now. 3rd at Memorial. But there's why I am shying away from Scotty Scheffler this week. He is just atrocious on POA. Just really bad on POA. He's better in the wind. It's supposed to be calm. I don't know how much you want to take into that. Otherwise, all the other parts of his game are actually pretty good. He's just really bad on POA. You get a week where he putts well. You've got a 3rd at the Memorial. You've got an 8th at the PGA. You got a 5th at WGC Congressional. He finished 20th at Riviera, the comp course. But earlier this year at the Farmers, he lost 4 strokes on the green, missed the cut. I'm going to shy away from Scotty Scheffler. I think he's fairly popular among people in the industry right now. That's going to be my fade as I sit here on a Tuesday evening. Maybe he's not very chalky and turns into a pivot, but I'm not going there. Next is Daniel Berger, and my models consistently rate him as 1 or 2 in the field. Whether that's right or not, we'll see. Again, this is another clip it and ha next week, but Berger's just playing, solid. I think his game sets up for a course like Torrey Pines. He's just fairly consistent. He does struggle a little bit with wedges, and like I've talked about, I don't think wedge play is going to be as significant as other venues, other major championships, or just tournaments throughout the year. And POA is his best surface by far. He's gaining off the tee. His irons have been just great. Fantastic. And putting, he's been good. So, he finished top 20 at the Charles Schwab, made the cut at the PGA, but it was pretty bad and made the cut at the PGA. 3rd at the Byron Nelson, top 15 at the RBC Heritage in Harbour Town. He did miss the cut at the Masters, but he wins the Pebble Beach Pro-Am earlier this year. So he's playing some good golf. He's been playing fantastic golf since the restart from COVID last year. He wins the first tournament back, and then he comes in 3rd, the second tournament back. So just playing some fantastic golf. I like Daniel Berger a lot this week, and I have already made an outright win bet on him at 50-1, which is still what he's at. I've doubled down and made that a top 5 as well at 9-1. I am all on Berger this week. Terrell Hatton next. He played very well. Made a big Sunday charge this week at the Palmetto. He's kind of the English version of Patrick Reed. He's a bulldog. He has that mentality. Say what you want about it. He doesn't quit. He doesn't give up on rounds or on tournaments. POA is his best surface. Plays well. I mean, he's a top 10 player in the world for a reason. Again, second at the Palmetto, made the cut at the PGA. Played the Heritage fairly well. Just wasn't great with the putter. Played well at the Masters. So he's Terrell Hatton's one of those players that you have to find the weeks where he putts well. And that's you could say that about everybody, sure, but you generally know what you're going to get with approach around the green. Around the green's a little bit shakier, but off the tee approach, he's very good. You just got to find the weeks where he's going to putt. It's as simple as that. I mean, shoot, he came second last week and lost 3 strokes on the green. So if you find a week where he isn't a disaster on the greens, Terrell Hatton's he's gonna contend, and I like him a lot this week as well. He's definitely a DFS target play, and he's sitting at 33-1, which is a bit low for my liking. I've thought about it at 33. If it was 35 or 40, I would probably pull the trigger. I think that Sunday charge dropped his price quite a bit from the Palmetto. Corey Connors is next. He's always going to rate out highly in my model. One of the best iron players in the world. He used to be a pretty bad putter, and that's actually come around recently. You can see in the last 10, he actually started to gain strokes, but historically he's been a pretty bad putter. The problem is POA is his absolute worst surface by far. Not even close. So if you're worried about POA performance, Corey Connors is somebody to fade this week. You can see the Wells Fargo, who loses 4.5, loses 2 at the Charles Schwab. But the weeks he is, everyone had thought he had figured something out in March and April and started racking up these really, really high finishes and thought that he had turned the corner and started to, become elite. And then the putter left him just as quick as it had, found him. So Corey Connors is somebody that I'm going to probably fade in DFS just because I think he'll be fairly chalky. But he is sitting at 70-1 on the betting board. And for somebody who's just an elite iron player like Corey Connors is, I'm a sucker for approach. Strokes gained approach. 71 is hard to pass up. I don't know if I'll pull the trigger, but 71 feels like value when a lot of tournaments leading up to this. I remember vividly, Valspar, Wells Fargo, he was in the 20s. So 71 feels pretty good. That scares me though. But that's Corey Connors. Louis next. He's been, look at the PGA. He's been playing well. But Louis, actually the best short game player the past 36 rounds in this field, and third at putting. Louis is pretty live, and he doesn't struggle for distance. That's clear. Even though he is Euro, I think maybe he's South African. He's international. He actually plays better in calm than windy, and his best surface clearly is POA, clearly, and he's just solid across the board. Louis is somebody that you should take a really hard, long look at this week. I like Louis' chances quite a bit this week. Granted, if everything is firing on normal cylinders, I think you've got quite a bargain here. Well, not in outright betting, I should say. Louis 33-1 to win, but for DFS, even if he's chalk, I like Louis this week quite a bit. Him and Finau in this range are two people that I'd be willing to eat some chalk on. Probably Berger too. I mean, he is number one in my models. I would probably eat a lot of chalk on Berger. Just to wrap up the 8,000s, you got Cameron Smith and Justin Rose. Cameron Smith has won this year, is playing some pretty good golf. Justin Rose, I have no idea where his game is. I can sum that up really quickly. I have no idea where his game is. If he's not even peak Justin Rose when he was number one in the world, but if he's anywhere near himself, then you've got a pretty good value here, because he has traditionally played Torrey Pines well. But I mean, where is his game at? I have no idea. I'm absolutely staying away from Justin Rose. I don't want any part of it. He is 60-1 right now to win. Poa is his worst surface. I'm completely out. If you see something with these numbers that you back Justin Rose and he plays well, all the power to you. I'm not going to get there. I'm going to spend more of this time on Cameron Smith, playing very well. He's always been known for his short game. He used to be pretty bad off the tee. He's still not great, but if he can be just a decent bit above average, he's gonna. I mean, he was second at the Fall Masters. He's gonna break through here soon with a major win, I think. I just don't think it's this week. Poa is his best surface. Generally plays better when it's easy or average. I think this will even out over time. He's Australian, so Australians are very good in the wind typically. Recent form, he missed the cut at the Memorial, but he made the cut at Kiowa, was ninth at the RBC Heritage. It's a short course. He was fourth at Riviera, and he played immaculate that week, but missed the cut at Torrey. So I'm personally out on Cameron Smith, but I can understand the reasons why someone would want to back him. Poa, if you think short game's gonna be more of a factor than I do, then absolutely Cameron Smith's your guy. Trying to breeze through some of these 7,000s here. 7,900 Abraham Answer. I really like this week. I can't back him at 40-1 on an outright bet, but someone I'm definitely targeting in DFS. He's just been sneakily playing some very good golf because he doesn't have a win yet. But load the putting split. I mean, Poa is very good on Poa. Good in the wind, which doesn't seem like it's going to be a factor this week. Fairly solid all around the board there as far as strokes gained numbers. Look at the recent form. You got a 14th, 8th at the PGA, 2nd, 5th, 18th, 26th at the Masters. Did miss the cut at the Genesis earlier this year, but he's made 9 straight cuts with nothing lower than a 26th. Abraham Answer is in peak form right now. If he would ever break through, it might be this. I can't back him at 40-1. I won't be surprised if he wins. I absolutely will not be surprised if he wins. I just can't get there on 40-1. But at 7,900, I am absolutely going to use him a bunch in DFS for DraftKings. That is, I don't want to say that's criminally underpriced, but that is a lot of value. If you're able to, at 7,900, you can start distributing that money elsewhere and heading up the pricing to get, to grab guys up further on the list that you like. Paul Casey's kind of the same way. I'm always going to be a Paul Casey backer, kind of like Xander in majors. He just plays difficult courses, difficult conditions well. POA is his worst surface. Gives you a little bit of a pause. He's always been mediocre with the putter. The thing is, his approaches have always been good. They are elite right now at the moment. Just spectacular. Fourth at the PGA, and I believe he was second or third in strokes gained approach at the PGA, and 21st at Valspar. Missed the cut at the Heritage, but a sixth, a 10th, a fifth, a eighth. Didn't play great at the Masters. Didn't play bad. Didn't play great at the Masters. So it's Paul Casey. You kind of know what you're going to get with him, especially in these tough conditions and a major. I'm always going to back him, DFS wise at least. I've stared at the 40-1 on Paul Casey. I've thought about it. I think I would need probably 50 to pull the trigger, and certainly I'll keep looking at it until we get closer to Wednesday night, Thursday morning. But 40 just seems just a bit too low for my liking on an outright bet. Next is Tommy Fleetwood. Played fairly well at the Palmetto this past weekend. 35th. Didn't putt very well, but the rest of his game had come around. He always used to be known as a very, very good iron player on the Euro Tour. That is just not translated over here in America yet. He's always been a very good short game wedge player. That's never been an issue. POA is his best surface. He's not a failure on the greens, but he's not great either. POA is his best surface. He's coming in on some questionable form. Missed the cut at the PGA. High finish at the Wells Fargo, but missed the cut the week before. So putting is his bugaboo. And like I said, he's normally been known as a great iron player, and the irons they're not there right now. So I'm personally out on Tommy Fleetwood this week, which is sad because I own him in a season-long thing. But it is what it is. He's just not playing well right now. Fitzpatrick is somebody who has been playing well, minus the approach, and that's why he never pops on my statistical models. But certainly you can't ignore some of these results. 10th last week at the Palmetto, 23rd at the PGA. There was a stretch there, including at the Genesis, a comp course. He was 5th, 11th, 10th, 9th. I mean, these are elite finishes in elite fields. You can't argue the results, even if the approach is not good. I don't think this course sets up well for Matthew Fitzpatrick, unfortunately. He's never been known as a great ball striker anyway. So on a course that makes you hit a lot of long irons, I'm just not there on Fitzpatrick. He is 45-1 right now, outright. I don't know what he's going to be with DFS. I can see why people might want to back him because of the off the tee game. I can see people wanting to shy away because of the approach. If he is chalky, I'm definitely fading. But if he is, too low ownership, maybe it's like 5-6%, that's it's a compelling pivot. That's the way I'll phrase it. I don't want to spend a lot of time on Phil. It was a fantastic story at the PGA. I think a lot of things had to go right for him, and all the power to him that did. Great, like I said, fantastic story. But you can see the numbers here. He is the first person that has been this far down in strokes gained total to this price point. I mean, Tommy Fleetwood was next at 56, I think. I mean, Justin Rose was 51st. Yeah, I mean, this is comically bad. And these numbers are with the PGA factored in. Um, if you're willing to bet like it was the 300 to 1 at the PGA and you hit, just keep riding that wave of I won some money on Phil Mickelson this year. Because if you would have told me that in January, I'd have laughed. I'd have completely laughed at you. And he's 66 to 1 right now. No thanks. I can get Adam Scott, Gary Woodland at 66. I can get Corey Connors, who's just unarguably a better player right now than Phil Mickelson. 15th in strokes gained versus where was he? There he is. 82nd. Yeah, no thanks. So that's all I got on Phil. The next person I'm really high on is Sam Burns. He's been a disaster with the wedges, sure. I've told you why I don't think wedges are going to come too big into play yet on this week at Torrey Pines. And, I mean, there's some spectacular finishes. Memorial wasn't great. Second, Byron Nelson. Off of a win. So he went first and then second. He had people were starting to get down on him after, about a month there of pretty bad form. People were wondering, was Sam Burns a fluke or, too much hype? Because leading up to the three missed cuts, you had a third at the Genesis, played decent, I guess, at the Pro-Am, 18th at the Farmers at Torrey Pines. So people thought this result was coming. They just didn't know how soon it was because they thought the window had passed for good form on Sam Burns. And it's somebody I'm high on this week. Not an abject failure on POA. Still has to prove it when the course gets very difficult. And again, he's not great in the wind and doesn't project to be windy. Sam Burns is somebody just because of the form on comp courses and here at the Farmers earlier this year. I like Sam Burns. He's 100 to 1 right now. That is very tempting for me just to pull the trigger on a Sam Burns outright 100 to 1. If he's contrarian, if he's not chalky, I would target him in DFS. But I mean, if he's anywhere even average owned, say like 10 to 12%, I probably won't get there because there are people in this price point minus Phil Mickelson that I like a little bit more. The next person being one of them, Jason Kokrak. I mean, you can see for being this low on the price board, 13th in strokes gained total in the past 36 rounds around the green. Again, like I've talked about, I don't think it's going to be too much of a factor this week. POA is his worst surface. It gives you a pause there. He hates playing in the wind. It's not supposed to be windy. He is somebody that has been playing very well recently when the course and the conditions got tough. He's never been known as a good wedge player. Coming off a win at the Charles Schwab, won earlier in the season, the swing season. Excuse me. Made the cut at the Farmers, made the cut at the Genesis. They were what I'd say middling weeks, but they were middling weeks for different reasons. At Torrey Pines, he lost some strokes on the green and was middling with his approach. The next, at the Genesis, he gained a little bit off the tee, which normally he's very good at. He's a pretty long hitter. Complete disaster approach and around the green, and then putted the lights out. But since these uneven finishes, I mean, you get 9th, 8th, 9th. Masters was very mediocre. 13th, first. I'm high on Jason Kokrak. I have not made it yet. I'm going to bet him at 50 to 1 with like Berger. Those are my two 50 to 1s that I'm on. And I'm using him in DFS. This does scare me a little bit, but he's in very good form. Sung Jae is a player that I like overall. I question where his game is. Kind of to the level of Justin Rose. I just don't know where his game is. I believe in the top tier talent. I really do. There was a time in the not so distant past where we thought this was the next big superstar in golf. And I mean, you can see just from these past few tournaments. I mean, one week his irons are in. The next week his off the tee is fine. The next week it's his putting that's fine. He puts it all together at the PGA and comes top 17th. But the week before that he did nothing right and missed the cut. If you can figure out where Sungjae is, let me know, because I want to back him. I have no idea. I mean, this is the epitome of whack-a-mole. Where is he at? What's going on with Sungjae? Because he's traditionally been a pretty solid player in all facets. Not great at anything, but good at everything. I don't know where he is. I want to back him so much because he is 100-1 right now. I don't know. I wish I did. In the comments, please let me know where is he at. I think I have to pass on him for now and make him prove that he's before I start using him or at least betting him. Shane Lowry, people don't realize how good he is off the tee. They think British Open style golfer. He is very good, and he's very good when it gets difficult. He's the British Open win was no fluke. I'll just say it. It was no fluke. He is a very, very good player. And he plays in the States well, too. He's not just a British Open specialist. He was second to DJ at the U.S. Open in 2000. Canadian Open. There's 2018, maybe? Sorry, now I'm scrolling because this is going to eat at me. No, sorry, it's 2016. He was second to DJ. So, anyway, more recent form. Clearly, 6th at the Memorial, 4th at the PGA, 9th at the RBC Heritage. He plays well when it gets tough. Certainly somebody to target in DFS, absolutely. Right now, where is Shane Lowry? He is 40-1. I just can't. I can't do 40-1 on Shane Lowry. I'm not gonna say it's bad, but that's just not enough value for me. I would much rather bet Paul Casey at 40-1, and I'm on the fence about Paul Casey, and I'm really high on Berger and Kokrak, and they're at 50-1. So I'm not going to bet Lowry at 40 if I'm higher on Berger and Kokrak, and I'm getting better odds. Sergio is next. Kind of like Sungjae. I don't know where his game's at right now. Putting, short game, abject failures, no doubt about it. Generally good off the tee. Poa, terrible. So ever since that Masters, he's just kind of been up and down. And, I mean, the recent form is, well, it's just frightening. Missed the cut in 4 of his last 5. Played the players fairly well, but missed the cut at the Genesis at Riviera early this year. Hasn't played a lot. I'm out on Sergio in both betting and on DFS. Sergio is 100-1, so if you see something that strikes your fancy, you think he's going to be good this week, all power to you. I'm not there. Joaquin Niemann, another player I really, really like, not necessarily for this week, but just another young star in the game, up and rising. He is terrible on POA. Having said that, he has never been good with wedges. If it becomes an around the green and wedge fest, Joaquin Niemann's fucked. I mean, properly fucked. But he's always been a good iron player. He's always been long and fairly straight off the tee. Recent form is middling. I mean, recent form. He was 30th at the PGA, top 20 at the Wells Fargo and the Valspar. So, I like Neiman. I don't necessarily like him this week. He is 70-1. I think that's good value, but I don't like Neiman this week. Gary Woodland is somebody I like this week for a lot of the reasons I've mentioned in shows prior to this one. It is a club down course, or it can be a club down course. And generally speaking, Gary Woodland plays club down course as well. Pebble Beach, when he won, I believe it was the PGA. Just got to check here. No, it was the U.S. Open. Excuse me, U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. He played amazingly. Gained 7 strokes on the green, gained 8.5 with the irons. So, I mean, Gary Woodland is another player that, generally speaking, people think off the tee, but it's actually his irons that are his bread and butter. Very uneven with the putter. I do like Gary Woodland this week. He's a little short priced at 66-1, but I do like Gary Woodland. He plays California golf very well. Not much more to say there. I don't think Poa is his worst, so a little bit of a reason to pause. Mark Leishman, somebody that's generally up on the leaderboard when it gets difficult. For being Australian, he doesn't play well in the wind, which is very curious. And it's somebody who's got some very, talk about questionable form coming in. Made the cut but didn't play well at Jax. Missed the cut at the PGA. Played well at the Masters, but that preceded 2 just awful rounds or awful tournaments. Was 32nd at the Genesis, 18th at Torrey Pines at the Farmers. So another guy that is, I won't say where is his game. It's just not peak performance that I want to see from Mark Leishman heading into a U.S. Open. And he is sitting at 80-1. So I'm not there. Probably not there on DFS either. Adam Scott, somebody who I don't know how to value Adam Scott. I really don't. I mean, he's good on POA. Generally plays better when it's difficult. And he's not a sexy name, so I mean he's solid. He's good putting. Off the tee is not good, and off the tee is going to be very important this week. I mean that's probably why I just haven't given a lot of thought to Adam Scott. But full disclosure, I'm never on Adam Scott. I don't know how to evaluate Adam Scott from a data perspective. I just don't. He consistently makes cuts at these difficult fields like the Genesis Invitational. Played well at Torrey Pines earlier this year. But I'm at a loss for words. If you all know how to value Adam Scott, comment below. I'm not on Adam Scott, but I can't say that there's a specific reason. I never play Adam Scott. I never use Adam Scott. He's at 66-1. I think that's a little too low for me, but I wish I had more, and I don't on Adam Scott. Brian Harman is somebody that I've given a long look to this week, and I'll probably end up passing on him unless he's just so contrarian, because he's not a long hitter at all. And his approaches are pretty bad. He hits so many fairways that if he doesn't hit the fairways this week, I guarantee you it's going to be a 2-day tournament for Brian Harman. All of his value off the tee is generally with finding fairways, and he does not play his long irons very well. But the reason I like Brian Harman is he is very good on POA. He's good in calm conditions, and he has played comp courses pretty well in the past. He's got pretty good form too, minus the miscut of the PGA. He's 8th at Charles Schwab. top 20s, including a top 5 at the Players. He's got really good form. This could completely backfire, just egg in the face, but Brian Harman is somebody I'm looking at as a potential pivot in DFS. Certainly not doing any outright betting and such on him. He is sitting at 90-1. I have no interest there. This is purely on a DFS side as a pivot. Bubba. Bubba can be summed up very easily. Is this a U.S. Open? Yes. All right, let's move on. I wish I was different. I wish there was some more analysis to do there, but well, I'll just show you. Hopefully, you all can see that. Let's see. You can see the top 2 lines. Okay, so let me read these in order. Recent first. Last year, 31st. Miscut, 51st. Miscut, 32nd, miscut. A lot of miscuts in there. If you want to use Bubba Watson, you're a Bubba Watson truther, by all means. I'm definitely not there this week. Siwoo Kim, I'm a sucker for Siwoo Kim. I always like Siwoo Kim. I wish there was some objective, more analysis there. He's not a great putter, but Bermuda is his worst by far. He's just not a great putter overall. Decent form coming in. He top 10 at the Memorial. Did miss the cut at the PGA, but made 5 cuts before that, including a top 10 at the Players, top 15 at the Masters. He did miss the cut at both the Genesis and the Farmers. So there's enough reason to fade Siwoo Kim. I'm just a Siwoo Kim fanboy. So I'll probably have a top 20 bet on him at this week. The next player on the list, Max Homa, I have already bet at 90-1. I'm going to double down and probably make that either a top 10 or a top 20. Around the green, not good, but won the Genesis earlier this year. Poa is his best surface. Generally plays better when it's difficult. We've talked about many times. I don't think around the green is going to come in too much of a factor here. And top 20 at Torrey Pines earlier this year. So, yeah, I'm all over Max Homa. 90-1. I thought that was too good to pass up. I'd have probably played him at 70. That would have probably been my lower limit. But Max Homa has been spectacular for the price point for DFS. Trying to quickly go through the rest of this because once we hit the 6,000s, there's not a lot to talk about. Billy Horschel, I'm not on this week. He's 67th. He's been really bad lately with his approach and around the green. Considering he had some really good finishes earlier this season, I'm just not there. Has not been playing extremely well lately. I don't think this is a good fit for him. He's more of a Florida type. He's from Florida or went to school at Florida, so he's a much more Florida style golfer than California. Harris English, even though he played well this past weekend, I am fading Harris English, and that's probably why I didn't do so great last week. Although he did fall back on Sunday, which made me feel a little bit better. Terrible on Poa. It is better when it gets difficult. Pretty decent form coming in, but I'm just not there with Harris English. His approaches are mediocre. He's been putting fairly well lately. I'm just not there with Harris English. Lee Westwood, love the guy. Would be a great story if he finally got a major. I don't see it. I just don't see it. That great, run, second at the API, second at the Players. Since then, he's played and it's not been pretty. So, That's a no-go for me on Lee Westwood. Charlie Hoffman, I don't think anyone needs to really talk about much on Charlie Hoffman. He's fifth in strokes gained total this far down on the price board. He's going to be chalky in DFS. He is sitting at 80-1 outright winner. You can do a lot worse than Charlie Hoffman at 80-1. Shoot at 60-1. He's a good bet. I won't back him because I don't think he's going to win. Just listen to the sentence: major winner Charlie Hoffman. I think he top tens. He could even top 5. I just don't think he wins. The truest wild card in the field, Matthew Wolff. He hadn't played. He hasn't done anything since getting that DQ. I think it was at the Masters for signing an incorrect scorecard. That's the fall Masters. Yeah, he's had injuries. There's my analysis. I'm clearly not there, but for one thing that would be for him, he came in a 4th and a 2nd in majors last season. So clearly the talent is there. I don't know where he is right now. Stewart Cink has played well this year. Clearly 38th strokes gained total. I don't think this is a bad course for him because he's actually gained some distance for being as old, as he is by PGA Tour standards, I should say. But POA is bad for him. He's gained some distance. He's had some really good form lately. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I have him in a season-long thing. I just don't see it this week for Stewart Cink. I might get there on a top 20, but shout out to a couple of friends I know who had Garrick Higgo this past week at the Palmetto. Was a really good week for them. I was not, and like I said, shout out to them. They did well. He is a very good player. He can hit the daylights out of the ball, and is known for his putting. In the past 4 or 5 tournaments, he won the Palmetto. He has won twice on the European Tour in the past couple of months. He's a solid player. Certainly somebody to target in DFS, especially on a major week. You have a lot of casuals who play who won't know who Garrick Higgo is. But outright betting 70-1 is a little short for me, but definitely DFS. Brandon Grace has been playing well too. Somebody who's going to be a really good DFS play, I think, might be chalky. He's also 125-1. That's pretty good value if you ask me. Coming off a 4th the Memorial. He's made the cut in 5 straight events. Won the Puerto Rico Open, which is an alternate field event, sure, but it is actually a comp course for Torrey Pines just because of the 7,400 length. The Puerto Rico Open is long, and he won that earlier this year. Played well at the Genesis. So Brandon Grace is somebody to kind of look at, 125-1 DFS as well. Christian Bezuidenhout, South African, good player. This is definitely not the course for him. He is just atrociously bad off the tee, both short and doesn't hit a lot of fairways for being a short hitter. Fantastic around the green and putter, but because I don't think this is going to be valued much this week, I'm out on Christian Bezuidenhout. I like the player, not the course for him. Matt Wallace, a lot of people like. I understand why. It's just solid across the board. 40th in strokes gained total. I don't know what. Yeah, POA's very good for him. Minus this Memorial tournament, he'd been playing pretty well. Made the cut at the PGA, 6th at the Wells Fargo, 18th, 3rd at the Valero Texas Open. He's somebody to look out for this week. 7,100. You could do a lot worse on DFS. He'll probably be fairly chalky, but he'll be worth it at 7,100 to save some money. 100 to 1 outright. Just to kind of quickly go through the rest of this. I like Ryan Palmer this week. Definitely not an outright bet, but I've considered a top 20 bet on him. He's kind of John Rahm light. His around the green game's pretty bad, but he generally plays longer courses pretty well. Poa's not his best, but he generally plays difficult courses fairly well. He's in really pretty good form, to be honest with you. He's made the cut in 13 of his last 14, something like that, dating back to the the swing season, wraparound season. So second at the Farmers earlier this year. There's a lot to like about Ryan Palmer, minus the POA performance. But I'm probably going to put a top 20 bet on Ryan Palmer. Matt Kuchar, Carlos Ortiz, Francesco. Streelman's always been an analytical darling. He'll be pretty good this week, I think, in DFS. He'll be chalky, but I think he'll be pretty good. I'm trying to rattle through these. Nothing really sticks out. A lot of people like Carlos Ortiz. A lot of driving distance there, and he's very good on POA. I understand the narrative of why people like Carlos Ortiz. I'm going to fade him. I can't get there. Missed the cut of the Genesis. 30th at the Farmers, the same course. His irons have been uneven, to say the best, although he is coming off of a spectacular performance with them from the Memorial. A lot of people like Carlos Ortiz. I understand why. I'm not getting there. A lot of people like Bobby Mack. The good player. People seem to think this might set up for him. I don't see how. I mean, these numbers are pretty bad. Schwartzel, Hindley, Jones, Poulter, no big feelings on it. Cameron Champ, even though length matters, you still kind of have to keep it on the course. And he's got every other part of his game other than driving distance blows. So no thanks on Cameron Champ. Kevin Na, like the player, probably not the course for him. And then we get into the 6,000s, and I'm going to go through these. Only a few that I kind of want to highlight. Wilco Nienabara. I hope I'm going to butcher that tremendously, and I'm sorry. Very good player. I am going to put an outright top 20 on him for sure. Very good player, very long hitter. I think he played the Palmetto. I think these are where his 4 rounds are. Yeah. And 14th at the Palmetto. I was impressed with what I saw. I like Wilco quite a bit. Let's see. Others that Johnny Vegas has been playing pretty well. I like him in a DFS spot this week. Generally a pretty good hitter, long hitter. Poa's pretty bad, but when you get down to this price range, you're going to have to take chances. Played very well at the Puerto Rico. Where'd it go? Puerto Rico Open. Played very well there on a comp course. Did miss the cut at Torrey Pines earlier this year. I mean, nobody down here is going to be perfect. That's why they're at this price point. But Johnny Vegas I really like at 6,800. I mentioned last night that I have somebody that I'm hoping that'll help you all out that is cheap and a bomb of a bet. Lanto Griffin's my guy this week. In the models, and this says he's 43rd in strokes gained total, which in of itself is not bad for someone you're paying 6,800 for. In my models, he's in the top 15 in multiple ways that I've tried to break this model down. He's always showing up. I like Lanto Griffin a lot this week. POA, very good on POA. He's not an abject failure when it gets difficult, so he can handle difficult conditions. He's not good in the wind, but it's projected not to be windy. Again, around the green, I don't think it's going to come into play nearly as much. His off the tee numbers have been very good recently. His approach the past 2 have not been great. I'm banking on a return to form when we saw in March. I like Lanto Griffin a lot this week. So more egg on the face when he goes 80, 78 and, costs me a lot of money. Cameron Young, I don't know much about, but he is coming off the Corn Ferry Tour. A lot of insiders think he is going to put up a big show this week, and all I can do is go by them because I don't know anything about him. But they say he's the real deal. Just trying to think of anyone else. If you want to target putting, Adam Hadwin's a good guy. He puts Poa pretty darn well. He's just a good putter in general. But you can see Poa is his best surface. It's the rest of the game is just. I mean, his approaches have been okay, but I'm scared of everything else. I don't think this is a good fit for him. But if you want to target a putter, Adam Hadwin's your guy. Justin Suh is interesting at 6,600. California kid, California guy. Troy Merritt's interesting at 6,500. Could do a lot worse. Brendan Steele's 6,400. Not too bad. Otherwise, like, you're starting to get into people who just don't have stats, and I don't know who they are. So, yeah. This was quite a long show. I know it was a breakdown of player by player. I hope you all enjoyed it. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the channel. Support's always appreciated. Comment below how you liked how this extra content, the player by player breakdown. And tomorrow we're going to do our DFS tactics show. So until then, may all your bets be profitable.